Good morning. We did.
Morning.
We're here. We're
Yay!
How's it look?
It is looking good.
This is so awesome. Let's just make sure that we got this up and running. Folks, I got new technology and I'm like all googly stupid over it right now. So it
It's
looks like
always good to be googly stupid.
I know I get googly stupid over this stuff, which is really great. Oh, this is awesome. I can hear it too. Woo!
Technology works, man.
How's it look? I know. There we go. Yay! We are up and running. Woohoo! Yeah, I told you I was a dork. All right. Good morning, folks. We are here. This is awesome. This is awesome stuff. I'm about ready to wow Susan. So welcome to the show. We are excited you guys are here today. Today we've got Suzanne Lucas, who is also known as the Evil HR Lady. And I am Brenda, the HR Lady, Brenda Neckbottle. And you guys can follow us at our social sites that I am plugging in right now across the board. See, I told you were going to like it.
I like it.
I love it. I am just excited. So, yeah, yay. You can tell what I was doing yesterday, couldn't you?
I was battling ants, so you had more fun.
I think I might have. No offense, but I think I might have.
I'm not offended because battling ants is never a lot of fun.
No, it's not. It is so funny. Yeah, I've been having a little fun with this last day or two, so it's been great. Oh my gosh! All right, so enough of that stuff. So, folks, if you wanted to link up with these again, I'm going to go ahead and show you our. Hey, I'm going to show you. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? I'm going to show you how you can find us really quick, and then we'll get it towards the back end as well. So that way you guys have access to us if you want to reach out to us. And this is only going to just get better and better and better. So
that's right.
Yay! All right, so I got our chat up and waiting for, if we have any questions come in, I'm going to go ahead and watch for that. Other than that, we can kick back, have coffee, and start talking.
Yeah, except I'm having my bubble water.
Your bubble water?
Yes.
I'm having decaf coffee. You don't want me on caffeine.
No, I imagine it's exciting.
It's something. It's something. It's something.
It's something.
I know, right? All right. So today we're talking about the lies that your HR data tells you.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lies.
Then there's little lies sometimes.
Well, and some of them are on purpose lies, where people are specifically trying to manipulate the data.
Yeah.
And there are others where people just don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
This kind of came about because I was judging for the Stevie Awards, and somebody had submitted something, and in their product line, they were talking about how 64% of their employees are as a failure to engage. At 64% of your employees may leave their job in 2020. Now, obviously, this was before the whole pandemic thing went awry, but I was like, you got to be kidding me. This isn't even remotely close. That's not even feasible.
Right. Nobody has that. Well, not nobody has that level of turnover, but
And if you do, man, you've got some serious issues.
Or your fast food.
Right. Exactly. But I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. And I mean, it's like the way that this was being portrayed it's really implying like 2/3 of employees across the board in the U.S. are looking at leaving their jobs in 2020. And like I said, obviously that was written before, but it's like no, that's the sales stuff.
Yeah, and that's what you do to get your clickbait headline.
Yes.
And the problem is, as we all know, a lot of people don't actually click on the clickbait headlines. They just believe them and share them or whatever. And so I'm curious, when you dug into the numbers, what's the truth, man? Who's really leaving? Any idea?
I didn't dig into the numbers too deeply because right now our numbers are so jacked.
That's true. That's true. Whatever was written before the
Yeah.
shutdown doesn't make any sense anymore.
No, not at all. I think this may have been written in December of 2019, but and then shortly, very quickly after that, all of a sudden the Rona showed up in our world. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have realistic numbers on stuff like this for a while.
No, I don't think we're going to have realistic numbers on this for a while either. And, we said yesterday when we talked about this that we weren't going to talk about the current virus situation, but I have to because I have to. It's about employees. At the beginning, there was this big article about how economists were predicting that up to 3 million people would lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And we're more than 10 times that now, which really just goes back into these numbers and where are they coming from? What assumptions were these people making when they were making their predictions? Because their assumptions were wrong, but they didn't give us their assumptions and how they calculated it. And a lot of times these headline type numbers don't give you that information. So it's impossible for the average person to even check. You have to follow up and figure it out. And most people aren't willing to do that.
No.
So that can become a huge issue.
It is. And, you have to, everybody's out to make a buck, right? So everybody's out to, get that big blasty headline and wow you to take the next step. That's the big thing. That's the secret. That's what everybody is actually after right now. And it kind of it gets wiggy and wonky. And the thing is that even though we're going to be getting Bureau of Labor Statistics data updated after this, you guys have to remember that the BLS data is 18 months old at any point in time that you look at it. So you have to do some kind of dirty math in your head to figure out where the data lies in the current landscape.
Yeah, and right now our landscape is so weird. There isn't a time period we can compare it to. And everybody's keeps going back to the 1918 flu, and there's just no comparison. The economy is just completely different.
Yeah.
And there's no comparing it to anything. So when we look at employment statistics and we look at things like turnover and hiring and all of that stuff right now, we're kind of just guessing. I mean, we know what the unemployment applications are.
Yes.
We know that. And other than that, we guess.
Yeah. One of my clients refers to what they're going through, amongst other things, is that it's like building an airplane while you're flying it.
Yeah.
And you should see, he like one time we did this whole thing and he had this diagram and everything, and this office is so cool. They've got like 2 cats and they literally run the roost. And so they had like the cat on top of the airplane. It was just really funny, but that is so true. It's like, that's just the circumstance that so many people are in right now. But did you see the news last week that came out about the EEO1 data?
That they're not requiring it?
Yes. No
2021?
EE1 data to be filed for the 2020 year.
That's so lovely.
So many federal contractors out there that are like, thank God.
Oh, I've done so many. So many of those reports in my day.
Are we keeping you awake?
It's past my bedtime, man. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. Yeah, no, that's amazing, and that's another bit of data right there. Are those types of reports and the affirmative action plans. And actually, I think we should talk a little bit about the data that goes into those.
Oh, go for it. This is a data show. Why not?
This is a data show, and I spent a lot of years doing data, and I came through it on the other side. You too can someday get out of the HR data hellhole.
Mm-hmm.
But on the affirmative action plans, you not only say how many women, how many minorities you have, but you break it down by position and then say how many people by that race, gender, whatever are available. And then you compare those numbers. And that brings up interesting questions about data, because I can tell you with certainty how many female, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian accountants I have at any given time. I have that data. Of course, race and gender are self-reported, so I'm not going to challenge you if you've declared yourself whatever. But there we go. But the question of how many are available in your community is a little bit on the iffy side. And sometimes I think it gives us kind of a false picture of what's really out there, because we take it as gospel truth. And we say, well, we need to hire more in this area. But if everybody's contracting out their affirmative action plans with the same vendor who's giving them the same data, then we're all fighting for the same people. And how accurate is that? And I don't know that we have a real way of knowing the answer to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've been one of those people where I've been fortunate. I've always had a really great company that I've worked with, and I referred many of my clients to over time. That company's by the name of Outsolve. They're awesome, and this is all they do. They do Vets 4212, they do EEO1, they do affirmative action, and they're just absolutely awesome. I mean, they are pros at it. This is all they, 20 plus years that they've been doing this. And and they've also been able to help me figure out the data challenges, even when I came into a situation and the data wasn't being recorded in advance, because there are ways of figuring it out. You just, you got to work on it, but you can do it.
Right.
But it's hard. It's not fun.
It's not fun. And then there are other things about data that
you share.
I
know that look on your face.
I could go on about this for a long time. I have had so many heated battles. Heated battles about data, and how it should be reported and what it means. So let's talk about turnover.
Oh, go for it. How dare you?
See the joy. The utter joy, Brenda. Turnover. There are different ways to calculate turnover.
Yeah.
And I can give you reasons that you want to do several different ways of it. You can do turnover with replacement. So you take the total number of active employees plus the terminated employees as your denominator, and then divide your term by that to give you
Right.
that. But if you have high turnover, that is really exaggerated, because like if you're fast food where your average employee lasts for 6 months and you do that year, that you're going to look like you have this huge denominator that you don't actually have.
Yeah.
You can do it without replacement, but then that overstates what you do. And you can also do an average head count and use that as your denominator. And all of these things give you different numbers. They're all okay. I'm not going to stand up and say this is how you have to do it. The thing is that you have to know what you're talking about when you're presenting your information. And you got to know what your agenda is.
Yeah.
So depending on how you do it, you can make your turnover look higher or lower.
Right.
And depending on what your denominator is. Way back in the dark ages, when I was just starting my career, and I was working for Wegmans, which is the greatest grocery store on the planet. Nobody will ever change my mind. I developed a turnover report that broke down turnover by race and gender and by store. So the thing is about Wegmans is it started in upstate New York and built out from there. And every little town in upstate New York has a Wegmans, which is why upstate New York is awesome. And so we did standard reports, so every store got the exact same report. And I sent out the first report to all of the HR store managers, not the store managers, the HR managers within the store, not the store managers. Although maybe I sent it to the store managers. I don't know. It's a long time ago. Anyway, I got a call, and one of the HR managers was upset. And she said, "Oh my gosh, my minority turnover is at 50%. What am I doing wrong?" And I looked, and she was at a store in the middle of freaking nowhere, upstate New York. And what she had was two Black employees, and one of whom quit. And I was able to pull the census data, and I said, "Look, your town has 1% minority in it. It's like 99% white. And so your denominator for this minority turnover doesn't mean anything." If you looked at our Buffalo store, which has a huge diverse population, their numbers actually meant something. But when you only had a population of 2 within the group, if any one of those quits, it looks terrible on your percentage points, but it wasn't really a terrible thing. People quit. But she had to be walked through that, because first of all, she just saw it and went, "Oh my gosh, I have failed." And she didn't stop and think through, okay, who's my hiring pool? Who are my employees? There's
your
nothing.
location, right? Your location comes into play. Like what you're talking about is perfect. I grew up in on the western side of Pennsylvania. And I mean, the town that I grew up in, if anybody were to have to do a EEO report, I mean, to get a minority, you'd have to really look hard. I mean, that's just the nature of the town that I grew up in. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it is what it is. And then you go into, Erie in the city, and the big city of Erie, right? Like, it's like the fourth largest.
They're awesome.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's like the 4th largest city in the state or something like that. And, I grew up in a population of 500,000 and dwindling, But, but then you get to the east side of Erie, and it is predominantly Black.
Right.
And now your demographics flip, where the minority is the majority. But even, but it's just, you get to that west side, and it's just different.
Well, exactly. And that's why when you're looking at these numbers, you have to pay attention to more than just what's in your business. You have to pay attention to to the surrounding issues. And it's the same thing when we look at salary data as well. The same job in suburban Erie is probably going to pay less than that job if it was in Manhattan or Washington, D.C.
Significantly.
What's that?
Significantly.
Significantly. Yeah,
Significantly.
significantly. And so you really need to look at how those things are playing a role in what your data looks like, and that you're comparing, dare I say it, apples to apples. So you want to be looking at your local data and not necessarily uh, your full national data or your global data. I mean, that's another thing. When you start comparing data globally, that's just bonkers. I mean, salaries don't translate across
No,
borders.
no, they don't. And I remember, oh my gosh, I remember, and thank goodness this isn't a thing anymore. But not only did we do the EEO1 data, but then we also had to, in 2015, the President Obama had signed the executive order for federal contractors that had to put together the Part 2 report. And that was the EEO data plus wage analysis as well. And I remember sitting in that symposium when that came out, and we had that year, I remember we had 12 executive orders and a new rule that came out from the OFCCP. And I sat there looking with my friend who I worked with at the time, and we just kind of looked at each other, and we were astonished. We're like, we need a drink. I mean, we just got slammed with all of these things coming down, and it's just, and I'm like, this is going to suffocate our federal contractors. They're small businesses. I mean, it's already taxing enough to do the work as a contractor, but now, I mean, they just increased it, right? And so we were just befoodled, literally, and just blown out of the water. And the first thing that went through my mind was, this is setting a precedent. It's an open door invitation for the EEO under that administration to be able to say, you know what, we're seeing this in federal contractors. It must exist everywhere else. So we're going to pursue it everywhere else as well. And eventually, that's exactly what happened. But with the new administration, they rolled back that executive order, and that data is no longer required because nobody knew how to do it all last year. I mean, the Supreme Court had to get involved and said to the EEOC, you're going to have this ready for collection because you're putting businesses through hell. And if you don't do it, we're gonna come down on you. We're gonna throw an injunction at you. And I mean, it was crazy. So, but the end of September of 2019, the Supreme Court had forced the EEOC to open up the portal to ensure that people who are scrambling to get all this data together could report it only with a new president to be able to not do it anymore. And
Yeah.
it's dangerous data.
Tell us why it's dangerous data.
So data can be interpreted in many different ways, as you and I both know.
Absolutely.
When data is interpreted with no context, which is that example that I showed you, like 64% of people are ready to jump ship, right? If you don't look at it through context, it tells a false narrative.
Well, sure. I mean, it's like my poor HR manager in rural New York that was like, oh my gosh, my minority turnover is 50%. I'm a horrible, horrible person.
Yeah.
Once we gave it the context,
Right.
then it was like, oh, okay. I just had this one person quit. We're all good. We're all good. And nobody quote me on those numbers. It was a long time ago, and I don't remember the exact percentages. But anyway, it was a freak out on her part, and
Right.
she just wasn't familiar with it. Was a brand new report. Yeah. Without that context around it, you really can't see what numbers really mean, and you can manipulate
Right.
numbers to try to give the information that you want to give to people. And I'd like to think that within HR that we don't do that, but we have our own agendas too. You know,
Absolutely.
we want more money for our training budgets. We want to outsource all of our government reports.
Right. Yeah, right.
As somebody who's filled out 8.3 billion government required reports, we want to outsource all of those reports to that lovely company that you recommended. Give them your business, have them take it away from the rest of us.
Right.
And so we really need to know not only what are the numbers, but what's your purpose in putting these together. And then you also can have situations where your senior leadership team wants something to show one way.
Yes.
And I especially see this on employee satisfaction surveys, that the surveys will be written in such a way as to force people to give positive answers, or the numbers are completely ignored when they come back, or the employees don't believe that it's anonymous.
Oh, that's a
Um,
big one.
and you know, one of the very first things that I did is that I did or I had done to me, I don't know, as a new manager, was a 360 review. And I'm sure many people have done this, where you evaluate yourself, your boss evaluates you, and your direct reports evaluate you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be anonymous on the direct reports side, right? I mean, you know who your boss is, but the direct reports data is supposed to be anonymized. Well, I only had 4 direct reports. And so, you know, when they were given multiple choice or true or false, I couldn't tell who said true and who said false. But there was freehand answers.
Right.
I knew exactly who said what.
Yeah. Yeah. That, over the years, I've done, help clients go, perform engagement surveys. And when we get to that section, do you have any other comments? And I tell them, I'm like, don't read in to who's writing it.
Right.
Stop it. Stop trying to figure that out.
But it's hard not to.
I know.
And some of it is so incredibly obvious that you can't not know. When she writes, she wouldn't let me work from home when my furnace broke. You know who that was. It's like we've only had one broken furnace and
person,
we know who that was.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. I mean, that's it, there's a certain element of it is what it is, and people write things and they don't, they just say what they're going to say. But I have run into situations where people have thought somebody has said one thing, and turned out it wasn't that person that actually wrote it, and now they've got hostility against that person or some form of angst. Because again, in the absence of information, people make stuff up, right? So in this situation, they had to make the assumption that it was somebody, turning out that it actually wasn't that person.
And that's another huge problem. And that gets into our data sources. And if it's not clear where it's coming from or what they're referring to, and often we see things one way, someone else sees things another way.
Absolutely.
And there's not a lot of understanding there, and those are communications issues, but the data can kind of mess all of that up. And if you don't have these controls on things, it can be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
In the ideal 360 review, a human would take and summarize points and take out anything that could be possibly identifiable. But I don't see that happening because it's just a tremendous amount of work to go through that sort of thing. And the same thing with, the employee engagement surveys.
Yeah.
Are you whitewashing things? Do your employees trust that their replies will be kept confidential?
Yes.
And there's been far too many cases where people have been told their replies will be confidential, but then their manager comes to them and says, "Why did you say this
Yep.
about me?" I mean, and the same thing with exit interviews. We say we're going to anonymize it. Your manager knows who quit this year.
Yes, they do. I mean, it's not hard,
It's not hard. I mean, if you want to anonymize it and give a summary report to the CEO,
Right.
absolutely. But when
Yeah.
we come back and say, "Brenda, here's your annual report," and you're like, "I had one person quit." I know precisely who this is.
Yeah, this is not hard. So, have you ever been a participant in the Gallup Q12?
No.
Okay. So the Gallup Q12 is it's an interesting survey. When I was with a big company, a big box, I've taken this several times, and same thing. The last 3 Fortune 500 company I was with, we used the Gallup Q12.
Okay.
And they are, I remember the first time taking it, the very first question, which is actually one of the questions, I'm looking them up right now on my phone. It says, "Do you have a best friend at work?" And every one of us went, "What? What do you mean, do I have a best friend? This is work. You don't, what?"
We don't have friends.
But
Right, Char.
right, but it took some clarification, meaning, do you have people that you can go to that you rely on? Not socially, right? So, but there's some, and a lot of these questions are written in a way to where the point of view is subjective to the individual and their experiences, right? So it's like, do you know what is expected of you at work? Do you have the materials and equipment to do your work right? At work, do you have the opportunity to do what you do best every day? In the last 7 days, have you received recognition or praise for doing good work? Does your supervisor or someone at work seem about you as a person? Is there someone at work who encourages your development? At work, do your opinions seem to count? Does the mission purpose of your company make you feel like your job is important? Are you associates, fellow employees are committed to doing quality work? That one never got a high rating in any of the companies that I worked with. In the last 6 months, has someone at work talked to you about progress in the last year? Have you had an opportunity to learn and grow? And that last one, have you had the opportunity to learn and grow, is the one that always strikes up the most conversation, because employees look at this as, well, you haven't given me any training. You haven't, sat down and talked to me about this. But it's like, you haven't looked at the other side of the coin to be able to say, what kind of learning opportunities did this company present you?
Right. And what kind of, assignments were learning opportunities?
Exactly. Right.
It may not have been a specific, here's your mentorship or here's your training on this new software, but
Right.
we're going to put you on this project. We're going to put you on this committee. All
Yes.
of these things are learning and development along those lines. Yeah, when you don't have clarity around it, the data you get back can be less than perfect.
Yes.
And I'm not discounting the value of asking these questions.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's important to do these type of engagement surveys, but when you lack clarity around it, it can be really difficult
Yes.
um, to get a feeling of what's really going on,
Yeah.
what we're really looking for. Um, and it worries me a little bit that companies are leaning on the hiring side towards these metrics and giving people tests, and especially the personality tests, which just drive me bonkers. Um, with the idea of we'll get an objective viewpoint on these candidates.
No.
And you just don't. There's very little that is truly objective when we're talking about soft skills. If we're going to say, how fast can you pound nails into a board, we can do a test. But the thing is that are we giving everybody the same hammer, the same type of nails, and the same type of wood? But we can do that. We can control all of that. But when you're talking about other things, that's a little bit harder. And I'm still bitter many, many years later, that I once applied at a temp agency right after graduate school, and they gave me one of those personality tests. And one of the questions was, do you ever feel tired? And I said, yes. I mean, who doesn't feel tired? And I turned
That question just made me tired.
and the woman goes through it, and she's sitting there. I'm sitting in front of her, and she's going through my answers, and she gets to that one, and she says, "I'm sorry, Suzanne, we're looking for people who are enthusiastic." And I was like, well, the question was, do you ever feel tired? Like, yeah, I do. It's bedtime. But she was interpreting that as, are you like, I don't know, too tired during the day to, I don't know what she was interpreting it as. But however she was interpreting it as was different than how I interpreted it as, yeah, I'm normal. That's why I sleep.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
And you see businesses using like the Myers-Briggs tests, and they're not designed for that.
Or DISC.
Oh, yes.
So these personality tests, folks, you can't use these. They don't stand. I mean, they're subjective. They're not objective. And I've taken Strength Finders now 6 times, and I've been relatively the same every time, roughly. If you were to talk to a Strength Finders coach, they would tell you they're always the same, regardless of the data. But if you, I got into a heated discussion with somebody about that one time.
We're so fun at parties.
Yeah, I know. That's why they put us in the corner.
That's right.
But so a while ago, I had a client that was using DISC and was using some other assessments, and they were heavily reliant on DISC. Well, my DISC profile changes depending on what role I'm playing. And,
Sure.
If I'm in a leadership capacity, well, I'm going to be a higher D. And right now I'm a high D and a high I combined. I'm equal. But that simply means that, I'm directive, but I'm also equally high as an influencer. But when it comes down to your S and your C, which is your, that standardization and, communication, the C is the third, is actually the second lowest, because literally my D and my I are the same. And then standardization is the lowest. But because that's not what my role is. My role is as an influencer and being that, well, that's why they call me the HR force of nature. Is oh, people. That's what the D is right there, right? But as a consultant, as a business partner with the seat at the table, I can't be standardized high and help leaders through a time period like this, because we're in this time period, we are building the airplane as we're flying it with this coronavirus.
Right. And I think that's a really critical thing, is that we all have a variety of skills that we can emphasize in different ways at different times.
Right.
And depending on what I am thinking about when I take the exam, I can skew it. It doesn't mean necessarily that in the job I would perform one way or another.
Right.
And those things need to be taken into consideration. And really, how we're approaching things makes such a huge difference. I know for me, depending on what my role is, when I walk into a room, I behave differently. You know, I mean, and just think about it. If you're going to a conference as a participant, you walk in and you sit down in a seat. If you're walking in as the speaker, you walk in confidently, you go up to the front, you introduce yourself to whoever is up there. Um, I'm the same person either way. But if I went up and introduced myself to everybody at the front of the room at every conference for every breakout session, I'd quickly get the label as the crazy HR lady. Um, just because it's not my role. When it is my role, then that's what I do, and that's like a basic example that people can relate to. But if I come into a company to look at their EEO data,
Right.
I'm going to do it differently than if I come in to talk about training and development.
Yep.
I can do both, but I'm going to approach it differently, and I'm going to use different skills in each situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I might break out spreadsheets for both, but
You and your spreadsheets.
that's how we get back to that being fun at parties thing.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, guess what?
What?
Are you ready for this? We'll get off of the data conversation for a few minutes. How's that?
Oh dear. Okay.
We have a question.
Ooh.
I know.
I'm excited.
This is our third official live session, and we have a question. So I'm going to read it off to you, and we'll go ahead and give our 2 cents here. So Stephanie asks, if a company wants employees to use their personal cell while working from home, but they don't want to reimburse for any amount of it, are employees obligated to use their personal device? And quite frankly, more than likely, most people only have one device, as very few people have a landline or any form of other telecommunications. But I don't think it's a really great. It's not a. Under the circumstances, I can understand why companies are not in a position to reimburse. But under normal circumstances, it's not really an engagement driver. And there's some other risks that come with that, especially if they're doing texting and email and whatnot. But there are some specific requirements under the American with Disabilities Act that you would definitely need to look up if you had a lower paying employee.
Well, and if you're in California, they have to reimburse you.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
there may be other states that have that requirement. I just know that California has every possible requirement.
Yeah, we'll give an answer and then we'll pony it off with, and then there's California.
That's accurate. I worked in the labor and employment law department of a big pharma company, and we had 3 junior attorneys. One covered 24 states, one covered 25 states, and one covered California. But yeah, I mean, they should be paying for it, but I agree right now when it's temporary, theoretically, it's temporary. I can see why this is not a top priority for anybody, but I also have to throw in my opposition to the bring your own device thing. I don't like it.
I don't either. I'm right there.
And there's so many reasons not to like it. This is one of them,
Yeah.
right? And the other is who owns the data that goes on your phone?
Yes.
And do you want them to be able to track you everywhere you go? Do you want them to have the power? Some companies make you sign this thing that allows them to erase your data off your phone when you leave. So all of your pictures or your memes that you've saved off, I don't know.
Well, that's one
All your personal stuff goes away.
Yeah, the goal and the intent is to erase their data, but they can't guarantee that they accidentally won't erase all of your data.
Right. And then you also have the problem of, monitoring when you're quote unquote off the clock. And, as an exempt employee, you're technically never off the clock and you're never technically on the clock. So it's all the time. But I think there's some real ethical concerns if you're a non-exempt employee and your company can see what you're doing when you're not being paid.
Yeah,
I don't like that at all. I don't like it. I like the separation between work and home.
Yeah. What it requires, though, is if you were to really separate everything, that means you have to carry 2 phones. And
yeah, I mean, and that's
reality.
the question, and people don't necessarily want to do that.
Yeah. Well,
And I get that. I totally get that. In that situation, though, I prefer the company here, we are providing you this phone, but you can use it for your own stuff rather than use your own phone and the company will then take ownership of it. Because then that gives me the option to carry 2 phones and be like, this is work, this is mine.
yep.
And I can separate it out. But if it's my phone, I don't have that option unless I want to buy my own second phone, which is
Right.
really ridiculous. And then when you get into laptops, you've got
Yeah, you dive deeper there.
whole issues there. I mean, if you look at my laptop, you've got not only access to anything I do work-wise, you've got all my bank and tax information. And even if I maintain a separate email account, I have my work email and then I have my personal email. If it's all on the same computer, it's going to be able to be accessed by your friendly IT guys. And I worry that people don't realize the extent. We talk about privacy and then we do a bring your own device thing.
But not now.
And to be fair, I truly believe most people are good people, most bosses are good people,
Yeah.
and most people couldn't care less what you do on your computer when you're not on the job.
Right.
But it's possible.
Yep.
It's totally possible.
Absolutely.
And I don't like it.
No,
And that was a roundabout answer to this question.
well, yeah. So, I mean, there's some benefits that come with that too. I mean, if they don't want to reimburse, I mean, like I said, right now I can totally understand the reason why companies aren't reimbursing simply because, companies are struggling to stay afloat. And that makes complete sense. And at some point in time, employees have to realize that, dire times sometimes create dire situations and circumstances, and everybody just has to pull together and make it happen. But the thing is that if you're using your personal phone for work stuff, you better be good at making sure that you keep your garbage out of business stuff, or that's going to come back and haunt you. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to be very graphic about it, I'm talking about those little nudie shots that you
I'm
keep
so
on
young.
That's right. I know. Plug your ears. Those little nudie shots that, adults tend to send back and forth. And some people are like, oh, I would never do that. And I'm like, oh, come on, really? Your off-color jokes. I mean, let's face it. We're not HR people that don't understand that everybody's got a different sense of humor. They have different flavors and tastes of life. But those things you keep out of the workplace. And matter of fact, I know we're getting into the weeds away from this question, but that's the reason why expectations are set on digital use, company use, what's acceptable use. And because what seems, innocuous to one person is offensive to somebody else. And so we have to draw those lines of expectation.
Right, right. And the other thing is that just because somebody laughed doesn't mean that they weren't offended by it. And this would be a completely different different show. Maybe we should do one sometime on harassment.
I
That
think
would be a good one.
we're sketching out another week here.
Yeah. We only got 8 minutes left, so we can't cover all of sexual harassment in 8 minutes.
No, I don't even want to go there yet.
But yeah, there's those concerns, and then there's even accidental, that you accidentally attach the wrong picture or something.
Oh, yeah.
That's that's something that you don't want to have happen. So yeah, you don't want to, because literally, I don't care if you're an adult, you want to take naked pictures of yourself, have fun. I don't want to see them ever. Yeah. No. And gentlemen, we would much rather see a picture of you in a tux than a picture of your nether regions. This is absolute truth. Put a suit on, take a picture, send it to me, and I'll be like, ooh, baby. Send me the lower half of your body, and you will be blocked. This applies on LinkedIn as well. Thank you, gentlemen. The suit. The suit is what we ladies want to see. Anyway.
I know. I had one of those creeping up on me yesterday on LinkedIn, and he got blocked immediately.
So. I get so many creepy LinkedIn guys. But you don't want to accidentally attach the picture to somebody and
it was in an email.
Yeah.
And now it's on a server that you have no access to.
Yeah. I mean, and there are things that are legit, and even if you're sending it outside of work channels. So I send a picture via Facebook Messenger to you. Mm-hmm. It's not a work channel, but it's still now on your work computer. And of course, if you're going to say that, I'm going to say nobody should access anything but work sites on their work laptop, which I know is completely and totally untenable.
I bet Stephanie's sitting there listening to us going, wow, I got way more than I bargained out of this question.
So, Stephanie, the answer to your question is, if you live in California, they absolutely positively have to pay you. And they have to do it without you asking even. That's the law. They're supposed to do it without you asking. If you live anywhere else, you can certainly ask, but I would look at the situation that the company is in. If it's a temporary thing, then then let it go.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Yeah. And then, again, if you're faced with an ADA claim and this is, part of an accommodation, then you have to look at the stipulations around American disabilities, which means that whatever the expense of the cost of the device, if it drives their salary or their rate below minimum wage, then yes, as an employer, you are required to compensate them for that.
Yes, and I certainly hope that there's nobody out there
that is earning that little. Yeah,
that is earning that little that they are expected to have their phone. Although there are a lot of companies now that are using third-party apps for like communications within companies, and that's an issue. And
for a whole nother show.
That's a whole other show, right? We have so many shows.
This is what happens when we actually sit down and plan our shows. We just go left and right, and it takes one of us to say, "Okay, so what are we doing on Tuesday?" Because we talked about somebody, but that's how we get all of our really great ideas and stuff to talk about. Because all this is real, and this is everything that we've seen in our careers.
Yeah, it's all real and it's all out there, and there's so many things to consider when you're making decisions. And even taking it back to our main theme with the data, the numbers can tell you some things, but you have to know where those numbers come from and what they actually mean, and what the definition is behind everything. Absolutely. And if you don't have that, you can't be 100% sure of what your data is actually telling you.
Yes.
And clickbait headlines.
Yes.
Go ahead and click them if I wrote them. If I wrote the article with the clickbait headline, please click it.
Yeah, and you know what? And here's the thing: like when you get these white papers sent to you, they should have the references in the back. Look at the references. Go back and cross-reference the references and see where they're pulling their information from. This thing that I'm not going to show you because it's got the company title on the front of it, and I don't want to slam them. But I'm looking at the references, and they're going back and citing data from like 2017, and I'm like, that's come on, guys, that's not even relevant in today's world. 2017 is not 2020, or it wasn't 2019. It's very different. So, all right. So, Suzanne.
Yes, ma'am.
We're gonna change things up here just a little bit. Are you ready? I'm gonna impress the heck out of you.
Okay, I'm ready to be impressed.
So we both have groups on Facebook that we are leading and engaging people with. You ready?
I'm ready.
Ha! How do you like that? Can you see it?
I can't, but I'll believe you.
Well, anyway, so can you share with people your Facebook group?
It's called Evil HR Lady, and we talk about all things HR, and we share a lot of funny work memes too. But it's a great, great group. If you have a question on something, you can post it. People will answer you. If you have a question you want to remain anonymous, you can email me and I'll post it for you. We talk about all things business and HR and dealing with managers and all of that stuff. So anybody with a job, it's a place for you.
Yes, absolutely. And if you are an HR professional and need that connection and feel like you're that HR army of one, or you may be an HR army of one, and you need the ability to spend more time with people, engage in some additional learning, over on the Facebook group, the Next Gen Women in HR is the group that I formed and lead. We're less than 6 months old, and we have almost 150 people that are in there, men and women. And so it's a fun group. We do free webinars. We do every week. We've got a Q&A on like, what would you do, or what do you think? And it's a lot of fun, and it's all real time, real information. They're great people over there. I love talking to them. You guys can join us here every Tuesday and at 9 a.m. And this is what we are super stoked and excited about all the time. And we enjoy our time with you guys, and cannot wait to have you guys back next week. Feel free to go ahead and answer it, go ahead and ask us any questions. Here's how you can connect with us. Again, you can connect with Suzanne over on LinkedIn. You can follow her also over on Twitter. And again, I am Brenda Neckbottle. You can follow me over on Instagram. You can find me as Brenda the HR Lady over on Instagram. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. You can follow me anyway, you saw the icon. You know what I'm talking about. And then also over at Facebook on Best Practices in HR. So we are just excited to have you guys. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for coming and hearing us and talking about data. I know it's not everybody's favorite subject.
Not at all.
But it should be. Yeah, training and development's more fun.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right.